People are becoming parents at older ages than any other time in human history, and I was one of those people that waited because I wanted to wait for the perfect time. But the reality is, if you wait for the perfect time, well, it's never going to happen. There's never going to be a perfect time. And I heard a story where a mom was talking to her son who was getting in his 30s, and he had the same thing where he was talking about waiting, and she said, look, when I had you, it wasn't the perfect time. We weren't financially secure. We weren't established. We didn't really have a good place to live, but there's never a perfect time. And that really resonated with me. And becoming a father, especially at a little bit older age, that's one of my biggest regrets, maybe, in many ways. The only thing is I wouldn't have the son that I currently have. I'd have different kids, but I wouldn't have this guy. And at this point, I can't even imagine life without this guy. But generally, I tell all the younger people, hey, learn from my mistakes. Don't wait too long, whether you're a male or a female, but especially if you're a female, obviously, because they have more of a finite time. But even if you're a guy, you don't want to be an older father, and then you're going to be a really old grandfather. You might not even ever get a chance to really spend quality time with your grandchildren. So don't wait too long. However, I have to admit, there are a couple of advantages to being a parent at an older age, at least a dad at an older age, and I'm going to talk about those right now. The first is obviously men, as they age, they generally acquire more wealth. And of course, that's very important if you're going to have children. So as a guy's in his 20s, those are the years that we're supposed to struggle. We're not really supposed to have a lot of stuff. Those are our learning years where we grow and we learn, and it teaches us a lot of things like humility. It teaches us a lot of the ways of the world. And these are important things that we're going to need to pass on to our children. So that's the obvious one that everyone knows about, and that's why everyone waits, because you want to get money. You want some sort of stability. In reality, though, the world is changing quick, and it's not as stable as you think. It's not like the previous generations where you maybe went to college or you went in the military, and then you got a job, and you worked that job until you retired. Well, now things aren't that stable. People are constantly changing careers, and the world we live in is constantly changing. So, but that can be an advantage if you can acquire more wealth, as you progress through your 20s into your 30s. That's the big thing. But the next thing that I'm going to talk about is really the main advantage, the most important aspect of being an older parent, the big leg up that we have over younger parents. And that is, as you age, not only do you generally acquire more financial stability or more wealth, but the real value is you acquire more knowledge, more wisdom. And before I got into my faith, because there is a guidebook to learn a lot of things, it's called the Bible, but of course when you're 20, 21, 22, you think you know everything, you think you have the world figured out, and you go a certain course and you do certain things. But even before I got into my faith, I started to kind of wise up. I started to realize that maybe some of the things I was doing, they weren't so good. So, because let's face it, young guys, they act a little bit nutty. I was no exception. If you've ever hung out with a group of college guys, they're not the most mature guys. And some of the things that they talk about and the way we joke around, guy stuff. But as you age, there was a point when I just started to learn that some of these things, maybe it's not what's best for me. It's not helping me out in life. There's certain things that I decided, well, these are things, maybe they're inappropriate to discuss, certain things that you learn not to say. Now, of course, they align very much with faith, and if you read the Bible seriously, you'd probably already know that. But a lot of this, it takes time to figure out on our own, but eventually you will come to that conclusion. At least if you have a reasonably normal IQ, at least, you'll come to these conclusions and you'll acquire that knowledge, that wisdom, how to live really the best way possible, in a way that helps you, in a way that benefits your life. And these are the things that we need to pass on to our children. So hopefully the things I discuss in this video are helping you out, because one of the things that occurred to me recently is when you have a child, one of two things happens. You either grow up very fast or you just become a bad parent. That's it. There's only two options. You either grow up or you become a bad parent. And I have a lot of the faults of my generation of we're getting into middle age, and by the time you're middle age, you're still living a very childish existence. You're not growing up. I know so many guys, so many of my contemporaries, they come home to their wife or they meet up with their girlfriend and they just kind of ignore her. They sit down after work, they play video games all day long, or they just want to hook up with their guy friends and play video games, that kind of stuff. So that's a fault. And my thing too, as many of you people that have followed this channel would see, I was very into traveling and doing all this stuff that it's not the most important thing in life. And having fun, it's great. And you got to feel good in life. That's one of the most important things. But some of this stuff, it's very superficial, and in the end, especially as you age, you find out it doesn't fulfill you. Instead of like using my earlier years and traveling the world like I've done, and people that, yeah, they look up to you and admire you, but in the end, you end up older and you're like, man, I missed out. I missed out on all these great family times that a lot of my other contemporaries are having. So I've seen the error of my ways. Now, like I said, you either grow up or you become a bad parent, and certainly we've had a lot of bad parents. Even in the old days, because the disadvantage of having children when you're very young, early 20s or whatever, you're not very mentally mature. So you're going to have to really grow up if you have children, but it's harder for people that age. They don't have the knowledge and the wisdom through experience and through just their brain developing and further aging. They don't have that. So a lot of people, they do end up bad parents. So no matter what, I really believe that most people, especially females obviously, don't wait to have your kids. Have them sooner rather than later, because now it occurred to me after I had my son, I'm going to be an old daddy. And I'm going to be a really old grandfather. So what I'm going to try and pass on to my children is that don't wait so long to have kids. Yeah, you might have to wait a little bit, especially for guys. I think maybe they have more benefit waiting, but don't wait too long to have your children. So hopefully this helps you out. If you're any parents watching this, go ahead and leave your thoughts, because let's face it, being a parent, as I'm finding out, it's a very difficult job. So it does take a certain level of maturity to handle well. You have to be a very responsible person and a very caring, loving person to endure how hard it is. It's a very, very hard job being a parent, but I think of it this way. I was a former wrestling champion, probably one of the hardest sports there is, and it took me a lot of hard work to become a champion wrestler, but that was fulfilling. It's kind of the same thing, I think, if you're a parent. Yeah, it's a big sacrifice, it's a lot of hard work, but ultimately you're doing it because it's a very fulfilling, rewarding thing. And hopefully we're churning out good people out for the future world.